say, whoa, I'm really live now. Actually, I learned this from Steve Beecham. He's a great organizer of a City Life Meet at Urbana in Boston. He says, when we fight, what's the answer? Do you know? We win. When we fight, we win. When we, I don't want to yell at this, y'all. I have to do it before we get ready. When we fight, we win. 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 Woo! All right. I'm a revolutionary too, but I like to call myself a radical solutionary. Because I want to deal with the root problems and present a solution. No window dressing, right? And I think capitalism is like defines the other paradigm, but it's a paradigm that we're battling against. But I'd say it's more like a religion, and its sacrament is inequality, and that's what we're fighting for a paradigm where we're all in this together, and that rocks, and that's a great thing to be for. So one of the things that I've always been excited about is that Greens, we radical solutionaries, we have the leaders' ideas to run the country. We shouldn't be afraid of power. We should totally be running for office. Look at our amazing Kashama, who's just like rocking it out there in the world, and other great people. So I'm even just let's see. That is good. You know what's great is, we've kind of been proving that when we fight, we win, right? Because we've been winning and winning and winning, and people are chasing us. But one thing I do think is true is that our no is way more powerful when our yes is super freaking compelling. All right? Because change is inevitable. Change is going to happen. We're on the front lines of it. You're going off in there someplace. But change is going to happen. But like Naomi Klein says in Shock Doctrine, the secret is to be ready with define the change we're moving into. So for the last 3 years, actually in response to a pro-Coalport labor guy, Mike Elliott, said, maybe we could do better. Mike's a great guy. So he said, in 2008, we did this paper on the Northern Corridor. That's the railroad from here to Chicago. And he said, see if you can green it. Well, that's a pretty good invitation. You get invited by your supposed opponent to answer the call, answer the challenge, and then they join with you. Then they leave their Peabody Coal and corporate allies, and we join forces. And that's what happened over the last few years. Backbone Campaign, Railroad Workers United, and a bunch of railroad experts around the country have been coming up with this idea we call Solutionary Rail. So it's a people-powered campaign. It's not just a book, but we're about to release a book to electrify America's railroads and open corridors to a clean energy future. This is freaking great, y'all. And it's not me, it's a whole team. Patrick Cobb is essential to this project. Electrification, you talk about making the impossible inevitable. It is inevitable. So we better freaking define what we want as a society from that process, or it's going to be a corporate giveaway. The rest of the world's doing electrification. This is the Trans-Siberian Railroad. Look at Italy's leading the way, 65% electrified. Ethiopia is building a new rail system. It's going to be electric rail, run on renewable energy. Washington State, in 1928, 15%, we had 3 times as much rail, 10 times as many rail jobs, and 15% of it was electrified, going over the mountains, going through the tunnels. And it was doing regenerative braking. We had locomotives able to do regenerative braking, Prius style, for 100 years, since 1915. So what the hell's wrong? What's up, right? Well, they say that it's really expensive capitalization and cost of this. $2 million a mile. Compare that to Sound Transit, friends. $2 million a mile is not very much money, especially compared to the war machine. taxes on improvements. See if we, because we gave away all that land to the railroad in the first place, took it from the people who really owned it, the tribes, and we gave it to the railroad company. Now they would have to pay property taxes if they invested in that improvement. So they're not going to do that because, wow, that would work out as well. So, yeah, it's privately owned infrastructure. That's also part of the problem. You look at this and you go like, really? God, that's almost obscene when that much infrastructure is owned by giant corporations. But we are against excuses. It's time to shift everything. We're going to lead with a vision, and we're going to overcome those challenges because we want to retake the commons. We want a Steel Interstate Development Authority that is publicly controlled, nonprofit, interjurisdictional authority that raises the money, builds and runs and owns that electrification infrastructure across the United States. We're going to reinvest in the commons through electrification of the major railroad corridors. Rail is so much more efficient. When you don't have to generate the electricity in a diesel engine to put it into the wheels of the truck, they call them, that are already electric. You just take it right from the line, and there. So these are the main corridors. You see the heaviest freight. We have to electrify the freight. We're not talking about pie in the sky, corporate, high-speed rail. That's not what we're talking about. That's great if we can do high-speed rail, but everybody who's done high-speed rail started by electrifying their own regular rail. The freight is there. The corridors exist. We just need to take the next step. That freight, you electrify the freight, that's automatically going to help the passengers. This is what Amtrak, part of them is existing lines, some is what they want to see in the future. And then because it's owned by the public, we can have public benefit mandates. We can run that renewable infrastructure. We can run those trains on renewable energy generated from wind and solar all over the country. We can move the traffic, the truck freight that fled the freeway, fled the tracks to the freeways after we built the interstate system and bring it back onto trains. We can speed up the trains to 70 to 125 miles an hour on existing tracks. We can return service to rural communities and farmers and help them get agricultural products to market. When we can build a coalition with farmers, and then we can free the snake. Because we won't need that dam anyway, because they will have to rely on barges to move their crops. We will unleash an unbelievable, now I said, big league. It's going to be big league. Okay, forget it. We're going to unleash a lot of renewable energy that's now currently not being utilized by communities who can really use that income. Through the middle of the state, you can see where it's most wind intensive, middle of the country. This is our solar now. You can see where the darkest is the most intensive solar, but we can do, we're at Germany and they're doing fine, right? We're up in the light area. And this is a NOAA scientist wanted this high voltage DC infrastructure to help balance renewable energy supply. Remember, everybody says, oh, but the sun's not shining and the wind doesn't always blow. Well, if you have efficient transmission, when the wind's not blowing in one place, it's definitely blowing someplace else. So this is what Alexander McDonald, NOAA scientist, said, well, it looks something like this. Well, that looks a lot like that. And those rights of way already exist. Oh, look at this, 75% of the country is a co-op. Those are rural electrical co-ops. They've been there since the 30s. Imagine all of those electrical co-ops owned by the people they serve, owned by us, if we live there. Generating and transmitting renewable energy and taking it from rural America into population centers. That's a mess of Photoshop, but that's basically the rail over the infrastructure. But hey, the railroads have a little bit of a dark past, right? Yeah, a lot of those rights of way were given in perpetuity without the consent of the tribes. Now, some were negotiated with the tribes or that, but a lot of them weren't. And there are a lot of tribes between here and Chicago, for instance, or from Los Angeles to Chicago, or Kansas, dealing with that's what they call the Southern Transcon. Anyway, what if all those tribes were doing renewable energy development? They actually put 29 tribes were part of a thing, a brochure, trying to get renewable energy investors, wind investors, to come and build out that capacity on the reservations. Tribal land, I hate that word reservation. And look at this. Standing Rock tribe was part of that 29 tribe group. And look at this, got wind. Guess who goes right through their land? That's BNSF Railroads. I hung out last Sunday with Angela Logan from the East Yard Environmental Justice Organization, now Moving Forward Network, an environmental justice network across the U.S. who's dealing with port pollution, diesel pollution from trucks, ships, and trains. The Alameda Corridor, the port of Long Beach, one of the biggest ports in the country, it's already electrified. And they have the stuff in the Alameda Corridor to get that stuff out of the city without adding more diesels, but they haven't done it yet. That's why we need social movement. But you can imagine, it can be clean, healthy places to live, and we can create a new social contract with labor. When we moved all the freight off the freeways, what happened was all these folks, the railroad companies stopped doing service on a schedule, and now they're trying to cut down the crews, and these folks are perpetually, chronically fatigued, and that's dangerous. We can build out this infrastructure simply. They have these trains in Europe where they install at about 1 or 2 miles a day, the electrification infrastructure. We're proposing the Northern Corridor from the Salish Sea to the Great Lakes Basin, and you can check it out at solutionaryrail.org/news and Solutionary Rail. So I do believe that love wins, and I believe that the revolution will not be Clintonized. It won't, it's not going to happen. Citizens can say whatever. But we need a strong, powerful movement, and we need electoral are that, and we need to take power in this country because our ideas are the way we all survive together, because we are all in this together. Rock and roll.